Hey friends, today's episode is all about how to pack up your classroom efficiently so that when you come back in August, everything is organized, easy to find, and ready for a smooth start to the new school year. So let's get started. Packing up your classroom at the end of the year can be a really daunting task. And I know this because I did it for 35 years. We had to pack up every single thing in our room. So I have a few tips for you that are going to make it not only easier for this year, but also make it a smoother transition for you in the fall. So my first tip is actually to get started early because the last week of school is a really busy time. You're going to be finishing assessments and writing report cards. And you're going to want to spend those last few days with your class having fun and making memories. So the last thing that you want is to be saddled with the entire packing up process after the kids have left for the year. So get a jump on packing up your classroom by starting early. During your last month of school, take one small project and complete it every day. It'll just make things so much easier. All right, tip number 2 is to set up your furniture the way you want it arranged for next year. Move it around, decide if you like it. You don't have to worry about scratching up the floors because the custodians are just going to strip the floors and wax them over the summer anyway. And then when you're happy with the arrangement, take some photos of your classroom, print them out on the printer, and then hang those photos on your board so your custodians can look at those when they're setting up your classroom for this summer. That way, you can avoid moving your furniture when you come back and scratching your freshly polished floors in August. And it's one less thing that you're going to have to do when you come back. Your room's going to be all set up and arranged exactly the way you want it. All right, tip number 3 is to change your bulletin board paper. Take all the old stuff down and replace it with fresh paper and border. In fact, one of my favorite teacher hacks is to take your old paper down and use it to measure the new paper. It makes the process go so much faster. And then give your kids the old paper and some markers or crayons. Lay it all out on the floor and let them sit there and draw. They love drawing on that giant paper. And then that'll give you time to put up your new bulletin board paper while they're sitting there drawing. Then cover your bulletin boards with some old sheets or newspaper or even the old paper that you took down so that they don't fade over the summer. And then when you come back in August, your bulletin board paper is all up and ready to go. And all you have to do is add your decorations. And then I'll go one step further. And if you do your calendar time on a bulletin board, get that all set up now for the first day of school too. It's just one less thing that you have to think about in the fall. All right, moving on to tip number 4 is to get your kids involved when you're packing up your classroom. By the end of the year, everything is so filthy, and I just wanted to clean everything. And the kids love to help with that kind of stuff, so let them. We actually had a cleanup challenge, and I'd divide my students into like 3 groups, and I'd give them group names like the Tidy Team, the Scrub Squad, and, the Neat Ninjas or something like that. And then I had slides that I'd show them for each challenge. For instance, one challenge was called the Library Clean Sweep, and each team had to take several boxes of books from our library. They had to empty out the box and clean it with a wipe. And then they had to put all the books back in the correct boxes and make sure they were all facing forward. And I'd set a timer on the board and I'd give them, so much time to work. And then when they were done, I'd check their work. We had a bunch of different challenges. We had the desk decathlon where they cleaned out their desks and wiped them clean. They had the cubby clear out where they had to throw all the trash away that was in their cubbies and wipe those clean. So there was a bunch of different challenges. And then when we were all done, we'd have our closing ceremonies and the teams would be awarded certificates for the gold medal or the silver medal or the bronze medal. So everybody got a certificate and the kids thought it was fun doing the competition. And I got my room cleaned in the process, made it go way faster. All right, tip number 5 is to clean out your file cabinets. If you've got extra copies of stuff or if you haven't put things back where they belong, this is the time to get them organized because your August self is going to thank you for that. Okay, tip number 6 is to organize your closets and drawers. If you're anything like me, by the end of the year, stuff has gotten shoved into places that it doesn't belong. Or, you have old games with missing pieces or whatever. Go through all that stuff and throw it away or give it away if you haven't used it in years, because I know that's hard. As a teacher, I think we all have a little hoarder in us. But the reality is that if you haven't used it in a couple of years, you probably never will. So just clean it out and get rid of it. All right, tip number 7 is to label everything. Once you've got your drawers and closets organized, put some labels on those bins and boxes so that you can easily find everything you need in the fall. All right, tip number 8 is to pack a back to school box. Chances are when you come back in August to get your room ready, you're going to need some things right away. Stuff like your stapler, tape, scissors, maybe a back to school checklist of everything you need to do. Put that stuff in a box and label it, and then put it in a spot where you can find it immediately. And then you won't have to be searching for that stuff and forget where you put it when you come back in August. All right, tip number 9, and you're going to thank me for this one, is to take pictures of all your anchor charts. I always made my anchor charts with my class, and so I had to make new ones every year. So if you do that, take pictures of all of them so that you remember how they looked, and it's going to be so much easier next year when you try to recreate it. Then I'd give mine all away to my class. I'd let everybody pick a number out of a box, and then when I called their number, they could come up and pick any anchor chart that they wanted to take home. They actually really loved taking those anchor charts home. They thought that was the coolest. All right, tip number 10 is to not be a squirrel. And what I mean by that is to pick one task and do it from start to finish before you move on to something else. It's so easy to jump from one thing to another, but that actually makes it so much harder and takes longer to get everything done when you do it that way. So I actually have a free end of the year checklist for you, and I'll put the link in the description for you. You can grab that, and it's going to help you remember all the things that you need to do before the end of the school year. All right, tip number 11 is to take inventory of all your supplies as you're cleaning out your cupboards and drawers. That way, over the summer, if there's something you need to replace, you're going to remember what you need, and you can grab it while it's on sale. All right, tip number 12 is to pack a summer box. I mean, should you work on school stuff over the summer? No, probably not. You deserve a break, and you shouldn't have to do one thing that has to do with school, and that's absolutely fine. But I know for me, about halfway through July, I started to think about school, and maybe I wanted to make some new math or literacy centers or something. And I'd always kick myself because I couldn't get into school until like a week before school started. We weren't allowed. And so if there's something that you think you might want to work on, pack it up in a summer box, and if you need it, you'll have it. And if you never touch it, that's okay too. Okay, and then my last tip, and you may or may not want to do this. Some years I did if I had the time, and some years I didn't. But the years I did this, I was always so glad when I came back in the fall. And that was to prep all my Meet the Teacher Night stuff. Make copies of any paperwork that you give to parents that night, parent helper information, sign-up sheets, all that kind of stuff, and put it in a file ready to go. Because when you do come back to school, there's so much to do. And if you already have some of that stuff done, it's a good feeling. If you want a copy of my classroom cleaning challenge slides or the free end of the year checklist, I'll put links to both of those things in the description. If this was helpful to you, be sure to click that follow button so you don't miss another episode. And until next time, remember to make learning feel like play, and I'll talk to you next week.